SaveWithConrad.com.
Yeah, I'm Justin Ruffin from Knoxville, Tennessee. What got me to Save with Conrad was the 83 Weeks podcast. I really wasn't thinking about getting rid of any debt. I just wanted to cash out some equity in the house to do remodeling. But I did both, so that was pretty awesome. Worked out great. We redid the foyer, built pantry space, and there's little odds and ends when I first bought the house that I wanted to take care of, and we were able to take care of it. So, yeah, paid off 2 cars and some credit card debt. So probably all in all, getting $30,000 in that. And then I got some $30,000 more equity out of the house, and still plenty of equity left over. So payment's good. I lowered my interest rate. I'm in a much better spot than I was. Super easy. Everybody was great. Very, very awesome people. Francis and Steve were great to work with. They were awesome. Made it for a very easy, seamless experience. I'd probably say all in all, probably $1,000 a month at least. I lowered my interest rate, especially the way the interest rates are right now, which is, that's amazing. I'm Justin Bruckman from Knoxville, Tennessee. I saved over $1,000 with SaveWithConrad.com, and I did a lot of renovations with that money as well.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.
Welcome to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well,
That's not a rib.
she pooted.
Was that a rib?
No, yeah, there's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared of shit.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
Fuck you, Bruce.
I love you.
Give me double cheeseburger. Double cheese. Double mayo. Double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not too much, Conrad the Mortgage Guy. How you doing?
Man, I'm excited to be here. We are going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to be talking about a lot of news and notes. We're going to cover some important happenings in wrestling history, and we're going to get your latest take on what's going on with Gail Kim. And we're also going to be covering the top 5 biggest WCW fumbles. These are great talent that once upon a time could have been a very big deal for WCW, but it didn't work out, and they wound up being a big deal in the WWE. Boy, I'm already thinking of some big names there, aren't you?
Yes, I am. There's some names that they let go. They didn't, they weren't huge names at the time. They became some of the biggest factors in the Attitude Era and some of the greatest names of all time. So it's going to be fun to go through this list.
It's also going to be fun for you to check out some brand new merch that we've got over at somethingtowrestlemerch.com. Check out these new shirts: Arrive, Clothesline Somebody, Leave. And what about the Wrestling God shirt? Both of these available now at somethingtowrestlemerch.com. Hey, Arrive, Clothesline Somebody, Leave. That sounds familiar right there.
Yes, it does. And people have been saying forever, you got to put this shirt out, I was hoping to have it here in time for the show today, but for some reason, the mail here in DC is kind of like cell phone service and everything else in DC, all screwed up right now. So it didn't get here, but I'm excited about having this shirt out.
I'm excited about talking about some of the biggest news in the history of wrestling. It's a pretty big week when you look at it from a nostalgia perspective. And you're kind of like our resident historian on my podcast network. And as we're recording, it's the 29th of September. And 65 years ago tomorrow, 2 proteges, Ricky Dozan, made their debuts on the same card. Of course, we're talking about Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki. I think most of our listeners are at least familiar with those names and know that, one ran All Japan and one ran New Japan. I don't think a lot of them knew they started as proteges of the same star and really on the same card. This is more than just Japan's version of Hogan Flair. It's somehow bigger than that, isn't it?
It's bigger than that. It's like a version of Hogan and Flair if Hogan and Flair owned companies that competed with each other in 2 of the biggest wrestling companies in the world, because that's what this became. You talk about the greatest wrestling classes of all time. You always talk about, for a very good reason, when you had Randy Orton, John Cena, Brock, Victoria, Shelton Benjamin, and all those incredible stars down there with Danny Davis and OVW and Jim Cornette. This class here, boy, that rivals it with these two guys. There's been some great classes that have come along. It's funny how you see that, because some years you just don't have anybody that really makes it. Some years you have some of these great classes, but you look at when they have these legendary classes. Look at these two guys, these two big, tall, skinny guys. You never realized that these two guys would be two of the biggest names in wrestling history. As much influence as there can possibly be in wrestling, these two guys had it.
Of course, Ricky Dozan was recruiting real, legitimate athletes. Inoki was a track star in Brazil. Baba was a baseball pitcher. Neither exactly the traditional route to pro wrestling, but hey, man, it worked. 12 years later, in 1972, the WWF held their first ever showdown at Shea Spectacular. This is Shea Stadium, of course, the home where the Mets play baseball in New York City. And it was headlined by Pedro Morales and Bruno Sammartino. You know this better than most. In that era, Vince's father, he really adopted, I wouldn't say that it's the UFC way of promoting fights, but the tail of the tape would always show their nationalities. And when I was watching UFC, I don't know, a decade ago with Kevin Sullivan, he said, "Oh, they're promoting the same way Vince did. You needed an ethnic group to be represented." And so I think the UFC was maybe doing that with the different countries. So Pedro Morales and Bruno Sammartino, man, that was meant for New York, was it not? And what a show at Shea Stadium. My gosh.
Yeah, absolutely meant for New York. And New York is so diverse and it's so big. You know, when you talk about the Puerto Rican Day Parade, I lived in New York for several years. What a fun time it was. And you always had a Puerto Rican big fight in the Garden. Usually you tried to find some type of heel that wasn't Puerto Rican to fight against your great Puerto Rican star, whoever it was. But you had the same thing with the Jewish stars, with the Italian stars. I mean, New York is so big. People will talk about how you have as many Jews in New York as you have in Tel Aviv, or you have as many Puerto Ricans there as you have in San Juan, or as many Italians as you have in Rome. You know, it really promoted based on ethnicity, because the fans came out so much to support this, because there was so much rivalry and so much pride among these guys, who a lot of them were first and second generation immigrants.
We should mention that this is the very first showdown at Shea. It happened in 72. There were 22,000 fans there. And I know what you're thinking. Well, that doesn't sound like that's that many more than Madison Square Garden. And you would be correct. It was during a rainstorm, which is like maybe the worst luck of all. The undercard on that, though, did feature the Fabulous Moolah, Chief Jay Strongbow, Captain Lou, the Spoiler, Gorilla Monsoon, and Ernie Ladd went to a time limit draw. Jack Briscoe was in there with Mr. Fuji. It was a pretty stacked card, but maybe it's most notable, John, because it was babyface versus babyface. And I think Bruno has argued that he wanted to prove that wouldn't work and wouldn't draw, and maybe Vince wasn't so convinced. I know that Vince Jr., that's not really his name, but we'll go with that. Vince's son, we know, would promote babyface versus babyface at WrestleMania 6 and then again at 12, but it was deemed as a risk. What do you think about, especially in that era, we're saying 72, babyface versus babyface? Was it ahead of its time? Could it have worked? Or is it not just the tried and true formula for pro wrestling, John?
It's not the tried and true formula. I don't think it works normally. It works when you have two stars that can make anything work. That's what happened in WrestleMania 6, WrestleMania 12. That's what happened here with Pedro and Bruno. Bruno could draw with, you could put anything on the other side. Pedro was a great star, don't get me wrong, but with Bruno, you could draw with just Bruno. It's tough to do that. It is tough to do a babyface versus babyface match. It's all dependent upon the stars. You really need the heel. It's easy to tell that story. It's a story that people understand. The babyface versus babyface story, it's hard to tell. And it's something that does not work that often. You have to have incredible stars to make it work. And all three of those matches that you said were incredible stars. And by the way, the reign under Vince Sr., we were in, I think, the Meadowlands, or was when they had rain. I think it was Meadowlands. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, and please do. But it rained right up till showtime and stopped like 15 minutes ahead of time. We're like, that's Vince. That man's got a horseshoe up his butt somewhere. Vince, our Vince, unbelievable the luck he had with weather. And we always say that's just divine intervention. Somebody up there is partners with him or scared of him or something.
As a reminder, if you've heard about the wrestling cards at Shea Stadium, it probably wasn't this 72 event. Again, it drew 22,000 fans. They tried again in 76. This is the same day where they would simulcast Ali versus Inoki. They fought over in Japan, but you could see it here on a closed circuit. But before you saw that, you would see Bruno wrestle Stan Hansen for the WWF heavyweight title. You'd also see Andre the Giant wrestle Chuck Wepner. A lot of our listeners may not be familiar with that name, but his story is pretty famous, whether people realize it or not. Right, John?
Love that guy, the Bayonne Bleeder. What a fucking, I love Chuck Wepner. He was a greeter down in Atlantic City for a while. I don't know if Chuck's still alive. I hope he is. I'd love to go see him. I remember walking in, and I went to the casino to gamble. And I walk in there, here's this big guy who walks up, and I didn't recognize him. I watched that fight, by the way, but I didn't recognize him. You know, it was years later. And he walks up and he hands me his card, and on the back of it, it's where he had knocked Ali down, which, if you remember, some people said he stepped on Ali's foot. It wasn't really a knockdown, not on purpose, stepped on his foot while he was punching him. It shouldn't have been ruled a knockdown. Some people say it was a legit knockdown. I have no idea. He had the greatest of all time on the canvas is all I know, and he's got a picture of it. That's pretty freaking cool. And he sat there and talked to me for 30 or 40 minutes. What a nice guy. I mean, just the gift of gab. That guy was made for television. You know, that's the inspiration, for those that don't know, of the Rocky movies. Him standing in there with the greatest of all time in Muhammad Ali. But man, Chuck Wepner is a good dude. It's a shame that he was not podcasts weren't around then. Yes. That guy would have made a fortune off podcasts, because, brother, he could talk and he was entertaining.
Of course, we all know in 1980, they would draw their biggest show at Shea Stadium. 36,000 fans, and what else? Bruno Sammartino and Larry Zbyszko, one of the more famous angles in the WWF. And underneath, a very young Hulk Hogan and a very young Andre the Giant. It's hard to believe that it all got started back in 1972 here. Let's also talk a little bit about, where we are with modern wrestling. I do want to get your take on Gail Kim, but I also want to talk about your wrestling history. We have a sad anniversary coming up here in the next several days. It'll be 28 years ago this week that we lost Brian Pillman. And he was such a young man. And it was, unfortunately, we find this news out during a live broadcast. It was in your house, Bad Blood. Yes, that is the show where Kane would debut. And yes, that is also the debut of a Hell in a Cell match that people are still talking about to this day. But John, I think first things first, you weren't actually on this show, Bad Blood, where we found out that Brian Pillman was no longer with us. Were you still booked? Because I know you had been on tour with these guys. Where were you when you got the news about Brian Pillman?
Halfway between St. Louis and Kansas City. And so I was on the show, but we left. We had a long drive. Back then you didn't stay for the show if you weren't last. Occasionally you would. Now it's different. Of course, guys travel different. They didn't have 20-something days on the road like we did. So me and Barry Windham had got in the car and drove. I think this is right. That St. Louis was Bad Blood. Is that right? Yeah, I believe that's correct. We're in Kansas City the next day, and me and Barry were driving across the state, and we stopped somewhere, and I don't remember how, because this was before cell phones, or at least before everybody had one. And I don't think Barry or I had one. I don't think. We got a message, stopped at a payphone or something, and somebody told us that Brian had passed away. So we got it halfway between. I was with Brian the night before in Minneapolis, and we worked across the river. We didn't work at the main one in Minneapolis. We worked at the Twin Cities Arena. It's across the river. We worked at the other one, which we didn't normally work. And Brian was there. And for the first, it was strange. You look at stuff in hindsight, and it makes sense in hindsight. You don't know if it's legit or you're just making stuff up. And I may just be making stuff up. But Brian and I were pretty good friends. Actually, I'd say good friends. And I'd always joked with him about something, a little personal joke, and he always just kind of laughed and snickered at. And I said it to him this day, which I'd said it to him 20 or 30 times. He always laughed and joked every time I come in. He snapped at me for the first time. I mean, not bad. I can not get word to fight, but he snapped at me. And I always thought, at the time, I thought, man, that's strange. That's not like Brian. Brian was a really nice guy. Brian was in a lot of pain. I remember asking him one time, we were, deep in some booze. And I said, are you in pain? He goes, every step I take hurts. I mean, he was in a tremendous amount of pain. And that night, I remember he snapped at me, and then later he didn't make the show in St. Louis. And I remember thinking right away back to the fact that it was different that he had snapped at me, and thinking, I don't think Brian's with us anymore. I mean, I remember thinking at the time that I think something's happened to him. And when we got the news, I was very sad, but not surprised, because I thought that's probably what happened when he didn't show up the next morning to the airport, because Brian was very much a professional and didn't make it to the show.
Not trying to speak ill of the dead, but I do want to try to get some context. When you were saying, "Are you in pain?" was that triggered based on you thinking or being concerned that maybe he was self-medicating, or what was it? Just his facial expression? You could tell he was grimacing when he moved. What was the impetus for you asking that?
Just curious as a friend, and had nothing behind it. Self-medication, yeah, that's I didn't look. I'm not going to discuss that, but I was just curious because I saw him walking, and sometimes he'd walk really bad. Kerry was like that. Kerry trained himself to walk kind of goofy, so that they wouldn't give away the fact that one of his legs didn't have at least all or most of his foot. Brian had a pretty bad gait, and sometimes it was really bad. And so I just one night we were sitting there having some drinks, and I was just curious, just as a friend. So are you in pain? And I didn't think he'd tell me. He's a tough guy. Tough guys don't normally bring it up. And he said, every step I take, and it was basically like every waking step I take hurts me. I mean, Brian was in a tremendous amount of pain by his own self-admission. And when tough guys like that say they're in pain, that's a lot of pain, because tough guys like that don't admit it.
JR had revealed that he had kind of some difficult conversations with Brian in that era, because he was concerned about Brian, and Brian, of course, was refusing the help and took it personally that JR was trying to offer that help. And obviously we don't know exactly what happened, but we do know that we lost one heck of a performer and someone who was pretty much universally beloved in the wrestling business. His last show was October 4th in St. Paul, Minnesota. The undercard that night was Flash Funk over Rockabilly, the Truth Commission over the New Blackjacks.
Damn them.
The Truth Commission. Recon was Bull Buchanan. Sniper was Rambo.
Two great workers. I can't believe those guys didn't hang around for 20 more years, especially Rambo. Because Bull did. I say not especially, but because Bull did, and had a great run. I really am surprised that Luke Poirier didn't have a better run. That guy was a freaking good worker, and he could work with anybody, and he was a big, good-looking guy. I'm really surprised he didn't last for a long, long time. He was a great champion in Europe. Did a great job for Otto and Peter.
Goldust would pick up a win over Brian Pillman, and unfortunately that would be Brian's last match with us. It was an interesting time in the WWF, to say the least. You had actually been around a wrestling promotion. You were around Dallas when Kerry Von Erich died. So a colleague passing away is unfortunately something that was not exactly new to you, but it does feel like in this era, 1997, how did the locker room react to this? I mean, this has to be a sobering, somber. I know that fans remember that show for Kane and for Hell in a Cell, but for people who really knew Brian, man, that had to be tough.
Yeah, it was tough. And anytime you lose a guy like that, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of guys. People want to put today's standards on standards that were, days that were 30 years ago.
That's right.
I'm not making any excuses for anybody. Okay, we took responsibility for everything we did, and I'm here and I'm alive and I'm grateful for it. But pills, people didn't know how bad pills were. They had no idea. I remember when I played pro football for a short time. Pills were everywhere there. I mean, North Dallas 40 and baseball. I mean, pills were just everywhere, and that's what killed these guys. It wasn't cocaine, it wasn't steroids, it was pills. You look at the guys that died. Now, a couple of them could have that. Certainly could have hurt the heart, but it was pills that killed all these guys. We didn't know how bad they were. You go to a doctor and say, "Man, my shoulder's killing me." They'd give you a script for 100 Percocets or something. 100. They give you whatever you wanted. I mean, doctors didn't realize how bad pills were, not just athletes. You'd see a doctor go, "Hey, doc, can I get a script for whatever else?" and they would sit there and just write it. Now, fortunately, when I broke in Texas, everybody was taking pills. And I sat there and looked at it. I thought, these pills look really bad. So it's the one vice, fortunately, that I never developed. I tried them, and I thought, man, I don't need to be taking this stuff. And, but people didn't know. And especially when you got hurt. When you got hurt and then you had to take pills to get over the injuries, you're on the road all the time. That's the only way you can work is by taking something to help you get through something. Then all of a sudden you're addicted to them and you don't realize it. And that happened to so many guys, and that's what killed so many of these guys.
I do want to ask, the very next day after Bad Blood, we have a Monday Night Raw, and to my surprise, and I think the surprise of many adults in the room, there was an interview with Melanie Pillman, just one day removed from the tragic passing of her husband, Brian. At the time, I think the narrative was Melanie is the one who had asked to be on the show. It wasn't Vince asking her, but I know Vince took some flack online and certainly in the newsletters for having Melanie on the show. This almost feels like a damned if you do, damned if you don't spot for Vince. Like, I get why people want to villainize him if they think it was his idea, but we come out and we learn, well, no, actually she asked if she could come on. How can you tell her no, John?
I don't think you can. This is Will, and she wants to talk about him, and you want to do something nice for the family. I mean, I don't see how you could possibly say no to this. And it's easy in hindsight. I was there for a lot of these really tough, bad decisions that you had to make. And if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't put her on there and years later you find out the widow wanted to come on, and why didn't you have her on? Because she's not a draw, or people are going to bash Vince for that. There's no right answer to this. I mean, Vince is a stand-up guy, and he was willing to say, okay, I did it. I made the decision. If you want to shoot arrows at somebody, shoot them at me. And, a lot of people did. I didn't look. If I'm Vince, I think I do the same thing. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer with this.
I do think with the context that almost nobody ever speaks about, that allegedly it was Melanie's idea, you really do get to understand the pressure that he was under. I think it's easy for people to say, oh, I would have never done that. I get that it would have been your idea, but if you were in Vince's shoes and she asked, I don't think you can say no.
No, I don't think you can either. I mean, you're going to tell the family themselves, we don't want you to do a eulogy on our television. Then you look like the biggest jerk in the world.
Yes.
I just Vince is in a bind here, and I thought he did the right thing. I think what I would have done the same thing. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I would have done the same thing. Looking back at all these decisions, and I've been there for some pretty rough decisions that had to be made, and fortunately that I was not making them. I pretty much agreed with everything they've done, and in all the cases with these rough decisions, you could choose either side and bash him over it, and of course people did.
One more question and then we'll move on. I know that, boy, I hate to frame it this way, and I'm not trying to be ugly, but I am saying in the light of losing Eddie Guerrero, the WWE started to do a lot more testing. They were doing exploratory stuff on guys' hearts and learning more about, how could we better protect the athletes? And I think the same thing can be said of the Benoit tragedy. I think WWE totally changed their approach to head trauma and head injuries, and wrestling, and humanity is better for having a greater understanding of CTE. Was there a silver lining? Did any positivity come from the passing of Brian Pillman, or was the wrestling world not ready for it? I'm trying to find any sort of, hey, that was bad that happened, but it led to this sort of thing. Does Brian Pillman's story have anything like that, do you think?
I think so. Yeah. I think there's a realization of that, Brian unfortunately got hooked on pain pills.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys knew that, and a lot of guys didn't take them. I'm one of the ones that didn't take them because of stuff. I mean, I knew how addictive they were, and I thought, look, I don't want to be taking 18 or 20 of these a day, which is what I would be doing with my personality if I became addicted to them, or 30 or 40. I mean, there's not a stop sign for me, and I know that, and so I just have to stay away from stuff like this. Remember, in the early 90s or mid 90s, whenever it was, WWE started testing for weed because weed was illegal, and it drove guys to pills. All the guys used to Smiths, and they quit smoking and the guys started taking pills. They were trying to do the right thing. It was a terrible decision that they made. People just didn't know enough about what was addictive and what was killing people at that time to make really good decisions. And, over the course of the next, 10 years, they figured it out. Unfortunately, that included several deaths. And by the way, I'm not going to blame WWE. I'm not going to blame any organization whatsoever. These guys are just like me. They had the ability to make a choice, and they chose this. And I'm not blaming them either. Addiction happens, and life happens. I wish Brian was still around because he was a good dude. I really like Brian, but we made our own choices. You can't blame somebody else for what we did.
Can you imagine what a force Brian Pillman could have been in modern wrestling?
But he was good.
His son, but I'm saying behind the scenes, his mind for the business. If he did a podcast, if he wrote a book, like it would have been so different, right?
Brian was good, and he could freaking talk, and he could work. I mean, that Pillman, God Almighty, man, that guy called lightning in a bottle. Brian Pillman, of course, he had that bad gimmick wheel. If he hadn't had that too, no telling what he could have done. I mean, Brian could have. Imagine Brian Pillman in the Attitude Era. I mean, that guy would have printed money for us. I would love to have seen it. He was an incredibly talented, smart guy.
Well, let's talk about something else that was pretty earth-shattering once upon a time in a different way. From the wrestling world perspective, 26 years ago, October 3rd, 1999, something a lot of people never expected would ever happen, happened. WCW announced that Vince Russo and Ed Ferrera were jumping over from the WWF, and they were going to be heading up WCW Creative. Now, I'm sure a lot of wrestling fans who've watched both shows were really excited about this because, let's be clear, WCW was no longer competitive and they needed some help. But this is at the same time that Vince was focusing on the WWF's IPO. They're about to make more money than ever before. And I think perhaps Ed and Vince felt a little slighted that, hey, with the expansion of the programming to now go from doing Raw to now we're going to do Raw and SmackDown, there's going to be much bigger demands on these two. I think they're asking for raises, and it's met with some resistance. And as the story goes, while Vince is in the UK, while McMahon is in the UK doing a UK only pay-per-view, Russo calls and quits over the phone. And I know people were critical of Russo for making that decision. How do you hear the news? And what did you think that, wait a minute, these guys who just got us be the lead horse, they're out of here? Where does that leave me?
Well, I'll disagree with the premise they got us to be the lead horse. I will disagree completely with that. I think they had a part of it, but they were certainly not the main reason. Vince McMahon is. There's no doubt about that. I mean, history has shown over the next, 20 years that Vince was indeed the guy. It was the meeting that Vince had with a lot of guys. Chris Chambers was in it, and Chris was the one that first drew up the scratch logo. When Vince told him, he goes, guys, I just don't know what draws anymore. And they sat there and came up with the idea for the Attitude Era. And then, Russo and Ferrara, like, I don't blame them. I mean, you cash in when you're hot. You don't cash in when you suck. Or people realize that you suck, whatever that is. You cash in when you're hot, and they cashed in at the peak. I mean, they went over there and thought, hey, it's all about us. And they went over there, and unfortunately, or fortunately for us, they weren't successful at all. In fact, just the opposite. But they were, complete failures. But I don't blame them for going. I mean, it's business. It's simply business. They cashed out when they should have.
Do you think Vince regretted in that moment not having writers under a contract? I mean, we know at this point, everybody's locked down talent wise to a contract, but the writers were not. And I know at different times they would ask people to sign a loyalty pledge. Did you think there was ever any discussion about, should we handle writer contracts differently?
No, because I don't think they thought they were necessary. Now you realize how important they are. But no, I think they thought they were a dime a dozen. And you now look at it and realize that there aren't that many great writers. And so you should have them. Vince, the last thing that he did business-wise was lock talent down. He'd done everything else with business about his, Vince really created business. He didn't create wrestling. And that was the big difference between him and all the territories, was business. But the one thing he didn't do, because there were so many of them, I think, was lock down talent. He didn't do that until he was forced to by Eric Bischoff. Thankfully that, he was. And writers, I think, were even behind that. I don't think anybody thought that writers mattered. As crazy as that sounds, that was kind of the mindset back then. Writers just didn't matter. You realize now how wrong that is and how important writers are. But at the time, like, writers? We need writers? You got to be kidding me.
Do you think your career may have looked any differently if Russo would have stuck around the WWE?
Yeah, I'd be fluent in Japan and Japanese. I would have been I would have been over there with Stan and Doc for the next 15, 20 years. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
I mean, I know we've talked about him a little bit, but did you guys have a personality conflict, or do you know that he just had an anti-Southern bias?
Yeah, he tried to get me to talk without a Southern accent. He said anybody with a Southern accent sounds stupid. And so he had some type of Southern bias. I mean, I thought Stone Cold did pretty well, and I thought JR did pretty well, but he had a Southern bias, and come with the arrogance of coming from the North, I guess, and owning a video store, a comic store, whatever the hell it was. But I don't know. I don't know what the whole issue was. I don't know if he didn't see merit in me, didn't see merit in Barry Windham, or just didn't like Southerners. I have no idea what it was.
How would you compare Russo and Ferrera to, say, Blancha or Kresge behind the scenes as a creative force and just their processes?
I didn't know Kresge very well. I know Tommy very well, and there's no comparison. Tommy is a brilliant guy. I think Tommy's a guy that should have been in wrestling for the next 30 years. I think Tommy should still be in wrestling. I think Tommy Blancha, he did a bunch of our APA skits. Tommy was so good to work with. He had a way of working with the guys. The guys all loved him. There was not, wasn't split. Russo could be very abrasive. And so guys were very split about, there were a few that liked him and, a lot that didn't. Tommy was just a guy liked by everybody. I thought Tommy was a brilliant guy. I thought Tommy should be in wrestling to this day.
I love that. Well, something that we are thankful about that's in wrestling to this day are out of office gummies. I'm such a fan of this product. I had some this past weekend. I'm going to recommend that you do too. By the way, I still love a good night out, but I'm not always in the mood to drink. But I found this alternative, Soul's out of office gummies. They give you that same light, happy buzz, but without the hangover, without the sugar, and without the awkward next morning. I have to admit, after a long day, I used to enjoy a cocktail, maybe a little vodka. But lately, I've been reaching for these Soul out of office gummies, and they've even got drinks now. And I really like unwinding without the alcohol. I don't have that next day fog. And if you find yourself struggling to hit the off switch at night, man, I recommend Soul's out of office gummies. They're going to help you relax, quiet your thoughts, and fall asleep naturally. It's just the right balance of CBD and THC to ease me into a restful night. And Soul is a wellness brand that believes that feeling good should be fun and it should be easy. Soul specializes in delicious hemp-derived THC and CBD products designed to boost your mood and help you unwind. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing buzz and boost your mood, enhance your creativity, and even get you that relaxation you've been looking for. They've got 5 different strengths so you can tailor the dose to fit your vibe. You got a gentle 1.5 milligram microdose and their newest 15 milligram gummy for a more elevated experience. And if you like their out of office gummies, you got to check out the brand new out of office beverage. It's a refreshing alcohol-free alternative that's perfect for winding down on the couch or socializing with friends. They've got a lot of great products. I've tried them all. I highly recommend them all. Even my mom is rocking the out of office gummies. And you should too. Bring on the good vibes and treat yourself to Soul today. And right now, Soul is offering our listeners 30% off your entire order. Go right now to getsoul.com. That's GETSOUL.com, getsoul.com, and use the code WRESTLE. That's getsoul.com with the promo code WRESTLE for 30% off. Hey, so let's talk about something that you and I have never talked about. we have heard before that sometimes there were monitors behind the scenes on Monday Night War, meaning on Nitro, they're keeping a monitor going so they can see what's going on Monday Night Raw. Was the same thing happening at Raw? Were you guys watching Nitro on a monitor? Do you remember seeing that?
We weren't watching it, but Howard Finkel was.
Okay.
And so, there was always a monitor on Nitro, because this is why will never happen again. That you have two live shows that are this high rated. And Monday Night Football at the time actually talked about going to a different night because wrestling was killing their ratings. And they thought, why compete with these guys? They realized it was going to be such a short window, and they made the right decision by staying, obviously. But we would sit there and watch Nitro, or Howard Finkel would, and we would counter programming live. I mean, they put something out there that we thought was so much better. We literally would change our program live, and so would they. I mean, this was an incredible time that we had. There will never be anything like this again, in my opinion, not in our lifetime.
I asked if you guys had that monitor going because on October 4th, 1999, so this is literally the day after Vince McMahon finds out that Vince Russo is leaving. But that Nitro, of course, for the next day, it's already written. And they're going to do a tribute match that fans still talk about to this day. Bret Hart's going to wrestle Chris Benoit in an Owen Hart tribute match. Harley Race is going to be the guest ring announcer. This is, in fact, WCW's first show in Kemper Arena since Owen passed away earlier in the year. So Owen passed away in this building in May, and now his brother's coming back, and he's going to get extended time with Chris Benoit in Harley Race's backyard. Like, if there was ever going to be a match that perhaps guys backstage at Monday Night Raw were going to watch, this may have been it. Do you remember any of the boys being particularly interested in watching this to pay tribute to Owen?
No, I don't remember guys, being overly interested. Obviously, we were very interested in it, but I don't remember it's like, hey, appointment television, we got to watch this. We had a show to do ourselves. And so it wasn't just like, we knew it was Owen, obviously. And, we wished them both the very best. We wished, the whole match very well, because we thought a lot of Owen. We loved the fact that they were doing this. But there wasn't just, I'm not meaning having disrespect to Bret or to Chris, but we had our own show to run. And so There wasn't just a ton of interest in, hey, all the boys all get around the monitor and see what's going on. We knew they were going to have a great match. We knew it was going to be very emotional, but we had a show to run ourselves.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, a lot of people still look at that match and think it's kind of like the last match of WCW as we knew it, because the next week, of course, we know Vince Russo's here and the way WCW is presented will forever change. Not for better or worse. It's just different. So this is the last match that really
I don't know. We used to always joke that Vince McMahon sent Vince Russo down there. We always thought he was still under contract to WWE. Vince McMahon even joked about that.
Well, okay, hang on now. I've heard fans suggest that, but you're saying that Vince McMahon himself used to joke about that?
Oh yeah, we used to joke about that. Vince Russo was so bad down there that Vince McMahon must have sent him, and Vince McMahon himself would make jokes about it. That I sent him down there, joking.
My gosh. Well, we know that that's not the only tragedy that happened that year in wrestling. Unfortunately, what a crazy week this was. On October 5th, 1999, so the very next day after that match on Nitro with Bret and Benoit, Darren Drozdov is paralyzed after a missed time running power bomb from D'Lo Brown. Were you at that show?
Sure was, yes. I remember him bringing Droz back. I remember going to the hospital that night to visit him, and tons of guys were there. Albert was. I don't know if Albert was Tenzai was his tag team partner at the time or just a good friend, but Tenzai was there as well, and he was very emotional about this. That was his really close friend, and so I guess maybe they were still tag team partners at the time. Obviously, they were very close, but yes, I was there.
What a tragedy, because I think both of these guys are universally loved, but seemingly it doesn't feel like anyone blames D'Lo in all this. But I interviewed D'Lo earlier this year, and he's carried it with him this entire time, to the point where in our interview earlier this year, he said, if I'm ever lucky enough to get the call to go in the Hall of Fame, I want to go in with Droz. I want them to put Droz in too. You could tell how long he's just been carrying this around. Such a good dude. And I know that we know that Droz his life and certainly his career to a much, I mean, it's not nearly as important as his life, but it was forever changed that day. But I think what doesn't get talked often enough about is D'Lo's did too.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. And D'Lo's a good man. He's a fine man. Love D'Lo. He's like a son to Ron. Ron even calls him his stepson, and D'Lo reciprocates the love. D'Lo's a good guy, a really good guy. You just hope something like this never happens. And you certainly hope it's not when you're in the ring with somebody that this happens. St. Clair was in the ring with Larry Cameron when Cameron died. Fortunately for Tony, it was in between rounds, when not in a hold or something, heaven forbid. D'Lo he'd done this a bunch of times. This was not a dangerous move. D'Lo knew what he's doing. Sometimes things happen. I've seen guys fall off ropes. I've seen guys, do all kinds of crazy things. You do something long enough, go to the driving range and hit a ball, hit a 9-iron, hit it 50 times, those that can play, and you're going to hit 49 really good shots. All of a sudden, one out of the blue is going to be shanked somewhere. And how did that happen? And it's just because sometimes things happen, and that's what happened here. Things happen, and unfortunately, it greatly impacted both people's lives, and it's just a terrible, terrible tragedy. It was heartbreaking to go to the hospital that night with Droz and realize, get the announcement from the doctor that, the neck is broken or whatever the official diagnosis was, and that he's paralyzed. I mean, that's a horrible thing to happen. I mean, when you go in different moves, I mean, you're taking your life in someone else's hands. Same thing happens when you make sure that somebody else is putting their life in your hands. Literally, that is the case sometimes. The last thing you want is something to happen. You have Droz, whose life was changed, and D'Lo's, whose life was changed. And D'Lo's a good dude. It's just, unfortunately, sometimes something happens, and that's what happened here.
It's crazy to me, I'm really thankful, but isn't it unbelievable almost that after all this time that WWE has existed, there's only been one person be paralyzed like this? Like, that's almost a miracle. And it speaks to how hardworking the crew is and how talented the boys and girls are, because I mean, this is no small feat to be able to do the physicality that happens week in, week out all over this country. And I know it's a much reduced schedule now, but to think that we used to tempt fate, I don't know, 20 times a match, 10 matches a show, 350 shows a year, and it only happened one time. Like, I'm not trying to pat WWE on the back. All that credit, I think, goes to the individual performers, because odds are way against that it's only happened one time, John.
It is, and especially because it's live.
Yes.
We don't have the benefit of working with camera angles and edits and things like they do in Hollywood, and mistakes still happen in Hollywood. I mean, these is live in front of people. You're sweaty. You're coming together, and you may not know exactly what the other guy called. You may not know exactly what the other guy's spot is. There's so many things that happen. I mean, look at many guys who've had broken backs, broken necks. I've had a broken back, just one of many, from different people. And, we only had one incident like this happen with Droz, and that's, it's horrible that one happened, but it's very fortunate that you haven't had 10 or 20, because I think the odds would say that you would have a lot more. And I think that goes to a lot of the professionalism of the guys and girls in the ring.
One of the things that I think Droz needs a lot of love for is it feels like even when something really terrible and really tragic happened to him like this, it doesn't feel like it ever broke his spirit. Like, from everybody I've talked to who knew him, and he was all smiles to the very end. What bravery to be able to be positive in the light of all that negativity, don't you think?
Droz was a good dude, a fun dude, and a double tough dude. I fought him in the Brawl for All, and we were good friends before, good friends after. He's a tough dude, and played a little pro football. who went hunting together with Hermie and Elliott Sadler. And, Draws it didn't seem to bother him. I mean, I'm sure it did. I mean, you go from being this big outdoor guy, and he was a huge outdoor guy, and you go from this big outdoor guy, all of a sudden now you're stuck in a wheelchair. I mean, I don't know how you don't get down, but he didn't. I mean, he was a remarkable human being that he didn't get down. He was always positive, never felt sorry for himself, never felt like life was against him. Just always a positive guy. He would go to events and he would always do things to uplift other people. I mean, that's a really rare, unique, good individual, and that's what Draws is, whatever however you want to say it.
Draws was the man, and I appreciate us taking a minute just to think about all the craziness that happened. I mean, what a consequential week when you really think about it. Like the idea that, Ricky Dozan brings a Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki to the world. They debut on the same card on this date all those years ago, and they ran the first super show at Shea Stadium this week all those years ago in 1972. And then 25 years after that, Brian Pillman passes away, and 2 years later, the same week, Vince Russo jumps ship, and the very next day, Bret Hart wrestles in the arena where his brother passed away earlier the same year, and the very next day, Draws was paralyzed. This is one of the more consequential weeks in wrestling history.
Yeah, it is. So many big things happened in this week that, it impacted the business for a very long time. I'll tell you a funny story with Draws. We were hunting with Elliott and Hermie Sadler, two good, if you don't know Hermie and Elliott, just two wonderful human beings. And Albert was there, and I was sitting in a tree stand or something, and Albert looked at me, but I'd taken the bullet out of the chamber because I didn't want to mistakenly shoot him or something, And so he's looking around with his binoculars, looking around, and I've got the gun pointed right at him. And, he knows how much we ribbed. And Albert almost jumped out of his skin when he sees me. He'd never been in the country. He's from the city. Ah! It's great.
It is great. Speaking of
Draws was there for that. I believe that was after the accident too. Draws was a good guy. Everybody just loved Draws. But and I say that about Albert. Albert, everybody loves him as well.
We're going to do top 5 WCW fumbles on the other side. So get ready. We want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. What are 5 of your biggest WCW fumbles? Let us know in the comment section. And in the meantime, let's brag about Cash App, man. What are you waiting for? You need built-in card security that keeps your money safe and protections that you can expect. When it comes to your money, you deserve to feel safe from fraud and in control. And buddy, that's exactly what you can expect from Cash App. When you get the Cash App card, not only do you get access to a ton of perks and benefits like exclusive early access to nationwide concert pre-sales or discounts on popular brands, you also get the extra added security with the power to instantly lock or unlock your card right from your phone in just one tap. If a suspicious transaction pops up on your card, Cash App has your back by automatically declining the purchase and sending you a heads up to confirm if it's you or not. Now, behind the scenes, you can rest assured knowing that your account balance is protected by 24/7 fraud monitoring. And if something ever feels off, you have the ability to lock your card right from your phone in just one tap. With Cash App, you can spend, save, and live your life knowing your money is right where you left it. With advanced built-in security, protections you can count on, and help when you need it. Spend with peace of mind today and order a Cash App card in the app or at cash.app/card. By the way, for a limited time, all new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code and earn some additional cash for real. Just download Cash App and use our exclusive referral code SECURE10 in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Instant discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to count down the top 5. Brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
All right, John, now it's time for one of our favorite parts of the show. We're going to talk about your top 5. And today our top 5 are the top 5 biggest fumbles in WCW. That's interesting to think about. What were the biggest WCW fumbles? And I think a lot of this was born out of the anniversary that we just recently passed, which was the 30-year anniversary of Steve Austin being released from his WCW contract.
Right.
We know when that happened, he jumped to the WWF, and well, his life and wrestling fans' lives changed a little bit. So I wanted to start with your top 5. Who were the biggest talents that slipped through WCW's fingers? Who were the top 5 biggest WCW fumbles?
Number 5.
All right, John, let's hear it. Coming in at number 5, you've got X-Pac on the list. Why is he number 5?
What an incredible star. I mean, what an absolute star. He was part of the NWO. He gets there, and then he's part of DX. I mean, this, I'm not sure that X-Pac, who gets a ton of credit, gets enough credit. He deserves a ton more. So when Shawn Michaels gets hurt and Shawn Michaels has to take a hiatus from the wrestling business, we don't know if he's ever coming back. We don't know what's going to happen with DX, this incredible faction that everybody loves that's starting to draw ratings. All of a sudden, X-Pac shows up, and when he does, the thing takes off. I mean, just like it did with the NWO. I mean, X-Pac is an unbelievably talented guy. But the fact that WCW let him go and let him come to us in the middle of a war, knowing he was friends with Hunter, that's a huge mistake. Eric did a lot of great things. This was a big mistake.
I do want to ask, if you talk to Eric about this situation, he says that, well, I guess we should start with what other people say. Other people would say, oh, they're trying to fire Sean Waltman to send a message to Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. The narrative is out there that those guys had gotten out of hand and they needed to be reined in, or whatever the verb is. And then we hear from Eric that wasn't exactly the case, but he had some disciplinary issues. Maybe he had some demons, or whatever you want to call it. And he felt like he had to draw a line somewhere, not necessarily to say make an example of, but he stopped just short of saying that. Do you still, with that context, do you still think it's a fumble, or was there a way to remedy it? And Eric just threw his hands up, at least in your opinion. And neither you nor I were there.
Absolutely. And I don't know if there's a way to remedy it or not. Eric's a very smart guy, and Eric built that entire company from, good grief, they're losing tens of millions of dollars and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. He did an incredible job. We're picking about the few things that he did that I thought were a mistake. What I thought was a mistake was figuring out how to deal with it in a way where you don't lose him, because he was worth it to pay him not to go to WWE. Because it was a huge deal when he went down there. I mean, you got to look at what happened with Shawn Michaels going out, and DX now, you don't know where they're going to be. They're a little bit rudderless. Triple H steps in. I don't think anybody knew how good he was going to be when he stepped in. But all of a sudden you bring in X-Pac. People don't realize how important that was before that to get into D-Generation X. And so I think what Eric should have done, and hindsight's always 20/20. We're picking apart something, a guy that had the biggest corporate turnaround in history. It's certainly in the wrestling business. I thought he should have just kept him, figured out a way to deal with whatever he's dealing with. Don't lose him. Don't let him go to the competition.
He's obviously had one hell of a career, but I often wonder what kind of a career would he have had he not gone to WCW? Because as you'll recall, he was the 1-2-3 kid, which worked as a while as a baby face, and then as more of a crybaby, maybe we'd call it a chicken shit heel. But there was a different version of him that we saw in the NWO, and that's the version that he came back to the WWE as. Do you think there would have been an opportunity for the evolution of the 1-2-3 kid to become X-Pac, or was WCW a necessary step, at least for him?
I think a necessary step. Obviously, he had the talent to do it. Look, Ron and I worked with Kane and X-Pac many times. That was one of the most fun groups we ever worked with. They were absolutely incredible. He was an incredible, still is, but I'm out of it now, so I'll talk past tense, an incredible wrestler. Absolutely fantastic. But it's one of those big what ifs. What if Milwaukee doesn't happen with Stone Cold? What if Triple H doesn't get punished because of the curtain call? There's always what ifs. But he made the most of it when he had a chance.
Well, I love hearing your rationale and reasoning. Now we know who is your number 5 biggest WCW fumble, but who comes in next at number 4 is Mick Foley. Now, instead of being fired a bunch of different times, as it's happened with other talents through the years, Mick Foley did have 2 very distinct runs with WCW. His initial departure in 1990 and then his final exit in 1994. Either way, he was frustrated with his character's booking, and he just felt like, when he lost that ear in the match with Vader overseas and they didn't do anything with it on TV, I think he knew at that point it removed all doubt. Hey, they don't have any plans for me. Little did we know he would go on to become one of the more iconic characters in WWE history. And that's something I don't even think Vince McMahon himself saw. Why do you categorize this as being the 4th biggest WCW fumble, John?
I think because of what he became in WWE. And I can certainly understand Eric's viewpoint in this. He didn't see it. And I'm not sure Vince McMahon saw it. I don't think they realized how talented Mick Foley was. He entered the Royal Rumble in 3 different characters. I don't think anybody saw that then. They just saw Cactus Jack and they thought maybe it was one-dimensional or whatever they thought. I don't think they realized the depth of Mick Foley. And, I don't think that's as big a fumble as it is. The result of it makes it look back and go, man, what a big fumble that was. I can understand their rationale at the time, but this was a huge deal for WWE. I mean, him and Rock drew incredible ratings during the Monday Night Raw wars. And it was a huge part of us being able to overcome WCW was Mick Foley.
It sure is interesting to think, all the talent they had at one point. But when you think about the great matches that he had in WCW, we're talking about Mick Foley as Cactus Jack. And he was an incredible opponent for Sting. He had unbelievable matches with Vader. It just felt like, I don't know, a missed opportunity. Do you think that was more? Because the thing is, I'd love to be critical of anybody in particular in WCW, but even Vince McMahon himself, I don't think saw it. As the story goes, JR was basically begging, give this guy a shot. And as the famous story goes, Vince said something like, that's fine, but cover his face up, put him in a mask. And Mankind, he made it work. Like, he's probably one of, if not the biggest sleeper in the history of wrestling that promoters just seemingly didn't get on a national level.
Yeah, and especially on a national level. I mean, you didn't have. Come look at what he's competing against as far as the stars. I mean, you look at guys like Luger, look at guys like Sting, look at guys like Hogan. Look at all these incredible bodies that were out there, and the guys that weren't were big. Just big animals. I mean, look at a guy like Vader or a guy like Diesel. Who had a great body, but it was huge. He is completely different from everybody. And I just don't think promoters saw it. They don't realize how entertaining he was. I mean, Mick could do anything. The rating numbers he drew were incredible that he did. And I don't think you're right. I don't think Vince McMahon saw it. I don't think Eric Bischoff saw it. I don't think hardly anybody saw it except for Mick.
I love his story. And I do think he's probably one of the more unsung heroes in wrestling. But I have to ask, do you think he becomes the megastar he is in WWE without stopping off in ECW? Not saying that he was never worthy of going to WWE, but I'm curious, do you think any of the character work and the long form promos, the serious promos, he was able to sort of, I don't know, color outside the lines a little bit in ECW? And do you think that perhaps caught the eye of maybe Bruce or Jim Cornette or even Vince himself?
I don't know if it caught the eye because I don't think Stone Cold caught their eye in ECW. Stone Cold goes down there. He's cutting these hellacious promos. Ron Simmons was down there cutting great promos. Foley is too. I mean, Paul Lee really did a great job of these guys of letting them be themselves and helping them, bring out what's inside of them. That would have never happened in WCW. It would have never happened in WWE either. That ECW step was a huge part of a lot of these guys' transitions. And then all of a sudden, when we get them and the business is changing to the Attitude Era of a more realistic era, when you love promos like that, these guys had it and they were able to bring that back out. But you're right. A lot of that came from ECW. And without that, I don't think these guys are the megastars that they are.
Well, let's keep it going, man. We're breaking down John's 5 biggest WCW fumbles. Coming up next, we've got number 3, and we're going outside the ring to ringside. Jim Ross is number 3 on your list. I'll admit, John, I was surprised to see this one on your list. It would have never occurred to me to think outside the ring. Why does JR land at number 3 for you?
Because he was the voice of the Attitude Era. And he was so good. I mean, you talk to people that listen to Attitude Era, they all talk about Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. And Godspeed to Jerry Lawler right now. He's having some health issues. Wonderful human being. But JR was the voice of WWE and the voice of the Attitude Era. I mean, he just had a different feel about him. He had a big game feel. He had a sports type feel. He had all those crazy, hokey, which I understood all of them, Southern sayings. He was just perfect for the Attitude Era. And if he hadn't come down here, I don't know who we'd have found. I don't know. Play-by-play guys are very rare. You look at how many play-by-play guys have made it in the last 40 years. You probably count on one hand, maybe 6 or 7, but it's not many. I mean, they're very, very few, and they're very, very rare. And he was one of them. And he was a huge part of the Attitude Era because of that.
Obviously we're going to sort of fantasy book here. But if JR wasn't behind the desk during the Attitude Era, who do you think would have been in that spot? Not who could have done as well. I don't think we can really honestly answer that. But just literally what other body would have sat in that chair, do you think?
That's interesting because we didn't have anybody because Gorilla was starting to retire.
Right.
All we had was Vince, and then we had Gorilla, and that was pretty much it. And Gordon Soley wasn't coming up. Lance Russell was certainly not coming up. And I don't know Tony Schiavone was the other guy that's out there. And I don't know who that was out there that could have done it because there was no other play-by-play guy during that era that really stuck his head out. Joey Styles did a great job with ECW. So I don't know. I don't know who it would have been. It would have been WWE would have had a real dilemma if they didn't have JR.
We know Lord Alfred Hayes was out of there by then, and he was always really more of a color guy. And we know that Gorilla was winding things down. Vince is going to remove himself from being on air, I think, in 97. Kevin Kelly, is he the only other answer, maybe?
And that might be it. Yes, that was the only other one out there. The only play-by-play out there guy out there was very good. Kevin is very good. So that's the only other one I think that could have done it. Cole came along later. Vince probably would have stayed longer during that time. Vince could have stepped back, which was a huge thing for WWE. Another reason getting JR was so important because it allowed Vince to step back from commentary to just go back to the Gorilla position and do the whole show and run the company and not have to worry about commentary, which was a big deal for our company. There aren't many guys out there. I mean, literally, you look at how many play-by-play guys there are in the history of wrestling. There aren't many. It's a tough job. I was talking to Corey Graves about it, who I think is doing an excellent job right now down at AAA. And, the idea of a play-by-play guy, it's so different from sport because you're part of a show. And a lot of guys never get that because a play-by-play guy is a step behind the action instead of a step ahead in sports. And that's a real hard dynamic for a lot of guys to swallow and be able to do. It takes putting your ego into the show and not into yourself because at times you're going to look stupid. And you say, oh, who is that? It's the Undertaker. You've seen him for 52 straight weeks, but if you give it away, you rob the audience of what they themselves will reveal. And so you stand a step behind the action most of the time. That's a hard thing to do. It's a hard mindset for a lot of guys to get into.
I love hearing the way you talk about wrestling. I can't wait to hear who is your number 2 on the top 5 biggest WCW fumbles. John, is this right? You've got Steve Austin at number 2. I just assumed he would be number 1. He is the inspiration for this list. We just passed the 30-year anniversary of him getting his walking papers famously by FedEx. Before we talk about that and why he's in this spot at number 2, have you heard the FedEx story? And was it offensive to you? I've heard some guys say, oh, it's disrespectful. And other guys would say, hey man, save me a trip. If you're letting me go, I don't want to have to fly to you to get fired. What say you?
Yeah, I've been fired before, and I've been told, hey, we're not going to use you going forward, but once you come in and talk to us, no, I'm not coming in to talk to you. If one of the result of that is that I'm not coming back going forward. No, you can send me a FedEx all day. It sucks getting fired. I mean, it really sucks. Anybody who's been fired knows that. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you temper it. I don't care how you dress it up. I don't care how you get your stuff sent back. It sucks. So I'd rather just get it by a FedEx box and do, you know what? I'm at home. I don't have to go anywhere today. I've been fired. Let me figure out what I'm going to do.
It is interesting to think how it all could have been different. I mean, not just the WWF and WCW and Steve Austin's career, but just wrestling as a whole. I don't know what their standards and practices, the way they were in Turner, if they would have ever allowed him to swear and drink beer and flip the middle finger. I mean, I know we saw some of that stuff in WCW, and that's not to say that that's what got him over, but those were such iconic parts of the Stone Cold Steve Austin repertoire. We're seeing a lot of screen grabs of his time in WCW, and even back then, guys like Dave Meltzer were saying, in a few years, Steve Austin will be regarded as the best wrestler in the world. I mean, people saw the upside in him, and then maybe there were some attitude issues or personality issues, or maybe there was just emotions running high on the heels of an injury. But it comes to an impasse, and little did we know the plain black trunks and the plain black boots, they hit. But would they have worked in WCW, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think any of it would have worked, and I don't think it ever would have happened. You know, Steve was, and when Meltzer says this, and I can't read Dave's mind, and, you know, if I could, I'd probably hate to because he just bashed me out of it. But I certainly can't. What he's saying is he's going to be one of the best wrestlers in the world. I don't think he was saying he's going to be one of the biggest draw in the history of wrestling. He certainly wasn't saying that, but he was. I don't know if he's talking about just one of the best wrestlers or talking about the biggest draw in wrestling. I don't know if anybody could see that with Steve. You knew he's going to be one of the best wrestlers. He was one of the best wrestlers. You know, he was actually a better wrestler probably when he's with the Hollywood Blondes than he was later because he was injured and he couldn't do as much. Now, he was a better worker then, but he could get so much more out of what he was doing. And, you know, he became the biggest draw in either him or Londo's history of the business. Any building you put his name on in the world, we sold out. He was that big. I mean, it was inexplicable how hot Stone Cold was. You had to see it to believe it. And you had to see the arenas a year before he got hot and then see him a year later when he's selling every single building out. It was just unreal. But if he doesn't get fired, he doesn't go to ECW. He doesn't start cutting these promos and learning what he really is. And then he doesn't come to WWE with this edge on him. If he'd have came to WWE directly and had been the ringmaster, he probably would have just had a great career, probably a Hall of Fame career with Ted DiBiase and been great. But because he went to ECW, because he was fired, because he had this edge on his chip on his shoulder, he became legendary. And I say legendary. I don't. You might find a bigger draw, maybe Londos or Hogan. I don't know, but it's greater. I don't know if they are or not. I know when he got hot, any building in the world you put his name on, we sold out. He was that good. And I don't think any of that happens without him having that progression to ECW and then to WWE.
I love hearing your perspective on that, but I'm really curious if he is one of the greatest draws of all time. What can possibly be the number one biggest WCW fumble in history? John, you have down The Undertaker over Austin. I'm surprised. Talk me through this.
Because I think you could recognize The Undertaker. This was a toss up to me, and I went back and forth with this. So it's not like number one is way ahead of number two. They're pretty much even to me, and I had to flip a coin and figure out which one was one and which one was two. I just think that missing when you say a big fumble, you fire Steve, you fired a great worker. All of a sudden he becomes this thing that you didn't realize that was going to happen. With Undertaker, you've got this 6'10" guy that can work, who's a hell of an athlete. You can't find something for him. That's why I say that's a bigger fumble to me than a Stone Cold. When you've got a guy can work, who's a big, tough guy, who carries himself like a champion, even when he was mean Mark, and you say that this guy can't draw money, which is what Ole Anderson said, which one of the most buffoon comments of all time. You can't find something for him. That's why I think that's the biggest fumble in WCW's history.
There's no doubt that these are all fumbles. I mean, who would have ever guessed that The Undertaker would have actually been maybe one of the first Paul Heyman guys?
Mm-hmm.
Those guys were an act in WCW as Mean Mark Callis and Paulie Dangerously. And who would have ever guessed that their careers would turn out the way they did? And I think really on some level, everybody had to take a look at that zombie character that The Undertaker was, whatever he was, and think this has a shelf life. I don't think anybody guesses that any one performer could make that gimmick work for a decade, much less more than two, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nobody that can make that work except for Mark Calloway. Absolutely no one. I mean, you put anybody in that character, it could be an interesting character. You're going to sell a few action figures. That's about it. You're not going to have this legendary run where you're this Mr. WrestleMania and you're 20-0. You're never going to have any of that from anybody else in the entire planet other than Mark Calloway. There's no way. He's just that good. He took something that was pretty hokey on paper, and turned it into something that everybody loves. I mean, to this day, man, I love The Undertaker. Okay, do you really want me to explain the whole character to you? And then you realize how silly it is? Nobody cares. It's because of Mark Calloway. He's that good. And I don't think that WCW could see something like that. They certainly could see he was this huge guy who had tons of athletic ability. I mean, this is just dropping the ball by Ole Anderson, which shows you that Ole could do some stupid stuff.
You know, we hear Bruce say it all the time, or we used to back when he did his own podcast. And he would say that so-and-so was playing wrestler. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but this is a pretty over the top character. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the word hokey, because for some reason, the hokiest stuff in the world didn't come off hokey when he was doing it. But when WCW tried like an over the top character like this, say the Dungeon of Doom or Glacier, it always came off like, man, this is some silly B-movie Elvira stuff. But for some reason, The Undertaker's approach to it was different. Do you think that's because he was just committed, or was there something else? Was there a coolness underneath to the real life Mark Calloway that came through The Undertaker? Or why was he able to make it not feel hokey and seemingly no one else could do that?
Yeah, there's also was Chronic tried to pull an APA skit one time, and I talked to Crush about it one time. I said, you know, they were like sitting in a like a sauna or something. They're like they're naked or something, and you know, there was no women around, and it just didn't look cool. You know, just looked like two old dudes sitting in a sauna somewhere. And I told Crush later, I said, if you're going to impersonate us, at least make it cool. He said, yeah, that didn't work like we planned. He was laughing about it, and we were too. You know, two good dudes. They did a lot of copycat stuff. So did we. That most of it didn't work. And most of it didn't work because stuff that worked because of the characters in them. I mean, you can put a guy in a Stone Cold gimmick, it ain't gonna work. No, there's no way. There'd never be another Stone Cold, just like there's never be another Hogan or Undertaker or Shawn Michaels or any of these guys. I think it was underneath coolness of Mark Calloway. I mean, he's just Cool Hand Luke, man. I mean, he's just always that way. He's the guy that, you know, I saw him at AAA when I was down there. He now is, you know, big man in charge. And he's got a coolness about him now to this day. And, you know, he's not even getting close to the ring except to produce stuff. And he's still got that coolness about him.
Well, that'll do it, boys and girls. We've broken down John Bradshaw Layfield's top 5 biggest WCW fumbles. What do you think wasn't on John's list? What does your top 5 list look like? We want to hear your suggestions and your comments below.
Hey, and one other thing, Conrad, for the fans to ask, does the Attitude Era go a different direction if not for some of these fumbles? Does WCW win the war?
Okay.
Without any of these fumbles? I mean, these guys are, you know, they're all Hall of Famers. You know, they all headlined WrestleMania or called WrestleMania or whatever. You know, these guys were the reasons that we won this war, a big part of it. A lot of these guys. So does it change without these guys? And which ones?
You know, we should also ask, you know, when we're talking about, hey, does it change? It's really in two directions. Like, I don't know that Steve Austin would have helped WCW win the war, but he wouldn't have helped the WWE win the war. So by like Steve Austin, I don't know that he would have ever achieved the heights of Stone Cold Steve Austin in WCW. But as long as he didn't achieve those heights in the WWE, WCW still wins, right?
That's right. And same with Mick Foley.
Yes.
You know, Mick Foley apparently had a shelf life down there that was not going to be that long because they let him go, and did not have something for him. As entertaining as he is, and as much as he still had left in him. So if he stays, he's not Mankind. He's not Dude Love. He's not doing all this stuff with The Rock. But if he stays there, he doesn't come to WWE. And that's a big deal.
Well, we want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. What is your top 5 when it comes to WCW Fumbles? Do you disagree with John? Would you switch anything? Let us know below, and stay tuned. We'll do it again next week with another top 5. All right, before we get to Gail Kim, because I do want to hear from John about Gail Kim, I got to tell you about Magic Spoon. By now, you already know that Magic Spoon makes high-protein, zero-sugar cereal and treats. They've all been reinvented from your childhood. I like to say you can taste the nostalgia. Seriously, every serving of Magic Spoon high-protein cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and only 4 grams of net carbs. But they come in nostalgic flavors like fruity, cocoa, and frosted. And Magic Spoon's high protein treats, man, they're crispy, they're crunchy, they're airy. And it's another great way to get 12 grams of protein on the go. You can lock these in mouth-watering flavors like marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, and dark chocolate. Both are great on the go, pre or post-workout, or even as a midnight snack. What are you waiting for? Go get $5 off your next order right now at magicspoon.com/wrestle, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/wrestle for $5 off. So, John, it's been quite a week this past week. I don't know if you've seen, but Gail Kim has decided that she had time, and she took a big highlight, a deathmatch highlight last week, and quote tweeted it and said something like, "Hey, tell me you don't know how to tell a story without telling me you don't know how to tell a story."
I love when guys have time on their hands and just think, you know what? Today's the day I choose violence. Let's have some fun. It just makes my day when somebody's in one of these Twitter wars and I'm not in them. It makes my day more than I'm not in them.
Well, I don't know that we can pull back the curtain, but you've shown me something on your phone, and granted, it was years ago, but you logged into Twitter and you went down to privacy, and I'm hoping I'm giving you some clues now, because I'd like for you to do that, because I want you to be able to show off. Because when we say that you've gone on like a JBL block party, I mean, you really did. I mean, I don't know. There have been major wrestling shows that have happened in arenas this year, and you had more people blocked.
Yes, it is true. I blocked around 18,000 people. I'm not sure exactly how many for sure, but I just block anybody who says something stupid. Anybody. I go to like all these autograph signings with Ron, and somebody goes, "Hey, you got me blocked." And Ron will always ask, "What'd you say?" Every time the guy just gets silent, goes, "Well, yeah, I said something that was pretty bad." Yeah, that's why you're blocked. So yes, I blocked somewhere around 18,000 people.
I don't know why, but that tickles me. And one day I'm going to need to get a screen grab so we can just show the world. I mean, folks, let's think about that. Madison Square Garden has been advertised as being sold out before with fewer people in it. And that's how many people JBL has blocked. And that's not even counting all the mutes. But
yes.
It's a different category, but I just always thought it was fascinating that you're running around like Pokemon trying to collect them all.
Yes, I am. I'm actually trying to find out right now about, how many people I've actually blocked. I'm not sure how to get to it, but it is around 18,000 people. Down, because it was 17,500 or something. I can't remember exactly. Several months ago, last time I checked it, and I blocked a lot of people since. I blocked 2 or 3 a day. Somebody says something stupid like, "Oh," somebody says, "Oh, you're a dick," or whatever else. I just block them. I don't have a lot of tolerance for stupidity.
Well, hey, listen, I appreciate this very progressive take, and we want to hear from you guys. If you're listening to the show right now,
and if you're blocked,
and John's got you blocked, we want you to let us know in the comments here on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com. Are you blocked, and why were you blocked? And the funniest story, we're going to reward with a little prize next week for our.
Oh yeah, and if you can find it, put out the tweet that made me block you.
Oh yes,
Because I love to read these things because there's some of them are actually funny. The ones that are funny that just take shots at me, I'll keep those because I enjoy humor. Most of them are just mean and say something nasty about me or say something stupid, and I just block them.
You know what? That's a great idea. Let us know in the comments here on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com if you got blocked, why you got blocked, and we'll pick a winner from there. But we're also going to throw this to Twitter because we've had a lot of fun with this. If John blocked you on Twitter, we want you to tweet the show and post the grab or the screen grab of what you think you wrote that got you blocked. We'll go through some of the funny ones here this week.
You can't see this because of the lights that I've got here. There it is. 17,168 people blocked. I'm not making that up. That's legitimate. 17,168 people blocked. Thank you. And I muted like 139 accounts for some reason. I guess I was trying to block them because I don't know why I mute them. But yeah, 17,138 people. So if you guys are looking for the trolls on the internet, like if Elon Musk wants to find the trolls,
just start with your blocked list.
I've got 17,138 that don't need to be on Earth. I mean, they're just stealing oxygen from the rest of us. So you can start with them. Like, you want to send a bunch of people to Mars and you don't care if they come back. Like, hey, we're going to send like 17,000 people, 138 people to Mars. We don't really care if we get them back. I've got the list right here. And then if they populate Mars, of course, they populate Mars, then it's going to be a bunch of trolls. Nobody's going to want to go visit. But I guess you'd go up there and, send them to somewhere else, to Venus or somewhere, or Uranus. I'll send them up in Uranus is where they probably need to be.
You got fired up there. I'll admit, I got distracted for a minute. What are we putting up people's anuses next week here on the show?
My 17,138 people, because we're putting, like, they were sending these guys to Mars. Somebody's got to go to Mars and colonize Mars. Musk is saying that the Earth is a finite thing that's going to die at some. That's all true. So he wants to send people to Mars, but you want to send people that you want to get back because they could all die. But if these guys all died, really nobody's going to probably miss them that much. So you could send these 17,138 people to Mars,
Uranus.
And then if they get there and populate the planet, you don't want all those trolls on a new planet. So then you could all send them, the 17,138 and their offspring, whatever they've done, they're all up Uranus. I just come on, send all people I blocked up Uranus. I'm a fucking child. I mean, like a child. I'm like 8 years old.
That sounds like something that was designed by like a witch over a cauldron when she was naked in a backyard or something.
Howling at the moon. Howling at the moon. I don't know if that ever, probably just south of Cincinnati. Not that I know.
Well, somebody else is a little south of Cincinnati. Jim
The only way you
Cornette.
could put 17,138 people up your anus is if it was like Tony Chimmel's anus or something.
Hey, speaking of anuses, we need to transition here because I want to get to this point. If you know why you got blocked on Twitter,
Yes.
John, we want you to take the screen grab and post it on social. It's at Prichard Show. That's where you can find us on Twitter. And if you'll tweet us at Prichard Show, why John blocked you, we will find some of these and have fun with it next week. Use the hashtag JBL blocked me. Hashtag JBL blocked me and tweet at Prichard Show proof that you're blocked and then what you think got you blocked. We'll have some fun.
Now don't tell me that nothing happened. You got blocked for no reason, because
That's
all
bullshit.
17,138 people, I guarantee there was a reason you got blocked. So if you find the reason, please send it, because some of them are probably pretty funny.
And we will be unblocking some people next week. I'll talk them into doing some unblocking live on air if they're funny with it. But we'll also throw you a new piece of merch. And, hey, we'll find a way to make a block turn into a positive thing. Hey, Jim Cornette actually took to Twitter last week, and he sort of echoed what Gail was saying. Hey, not a big fan of deathmatch wrestling. He's never shy on opinions. But that, of course, well, led a lot of people to jump to conclusions. She was nice to Jim after Jim was nice to her. And there is a big contingent of online wrestling fans who, well, they're anti-Jim Cornette because he's not always in favor of the latest and greatest flavor in professional wrestling, specifically surrounding AEW. And then that created a discourse amongst people in and around the business. I saw lots of things tweeted in code, even Kenny Omega saying that Gail Kim was doing splits on it for attention from TKO, even though Gail doesn't work for WWE and hasn't in a long time, and has been pretty outspoken about her less than favorable experiences at times. This felt like it just blew up out of nowhere. And I'm curious, is there a lesson to be learned in Gail Kim just sharing her opinion on deathmatch wrestling? Because it felt like it was Gail Kim versus the world for a few days, and I couldn't really figure out why.
Okay. I'm not Kenny Omega. I'm not going to talk about Kenny Omega. He's a terrific wrestler, and I'm not going to include him with who I'm talking about because he has right to his opinion, and I have a lot of respect for him. But the other ones, all out there, they're part of my 17,138 is what I think it is. These are the guys I blocked. You don't know where they are? They're talking about Gail Kim right now. Look, she has her opinion. I remember the first time I saw a death match in person, I'd gone up to was Atlantic City, I think it was, and I was there with GCW, Brent Lauderdale. And the first match was a death match, and they were kind of nervous because they thought, here's this old school guy, me, sitting there watching it. Those guys worked their ass off, and I thought it was very entertaining. Not my style and not something I want to do, but I thought it was entertaining, and I thought it was very good. I told both of them guys, you worked very hard. They did some really creative stuff. But Gail Kim has her opinion about it. Is it something that I think belongs in wrestling? I don't know. I mean, I remember when Onita first started doing it in Japan in the early 90s, they were doing massive crowds, and Foley and Funk were doing crazy stuff then. And now you look at it back and go, man, that was great stuff. That was groundbreaking stuff. Well, I don't know what you're going to look at this in 20 years, and you might say the same thing about this. I don't know what you're going to say. I think it's a little out of place, but I wouldn't put it. I think it's a matter of where you put it. When you went to an Onita show, you knew death matches were going to happen. There's going to be a lot of blood and a lot of crazy stuff happening. It's going to happen when you have a death match that is publicized. Do you put it on normal television? Absolutely not, in my opinion, because then you start running out your casual fans, because your hardcore fans tend to like this more than your casual fans. Is there an occasional hardcore spot that's a death match spot that comes into play on normal television? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know where this all came from Gail Kim, and all of a sudden she's gets blown up over this, and all of a sudden she's bashing this is a rabbit trail that went a million different ways, and you turn simple math into calculus here to get to that point.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of like. Wait a minute, what? When and how was she critical of AEW? Now, I do guess there was a comment out there that she wasn't. Maybe she shared her opinion about Riho. And people jumped on her about that. And I couldn't help but think, man, if by now Gail Kim hasn't earned her right to share her opinions on pro wrestling, when could she?
Holy cow, yeah. I mean, she's going to the Hall of Fame. Is it this year she's going to the Hall of Fame, or with TNA? Or is she already in the Hall of Fame?
She may already be in the Hall of Fame, but she's going to be in all the other ones too, is my point.
Yeah, I think she will be. She should be. I saw that, Angelina Love was going in the Hall of Fame with the Pretty People. Or
Gail Kim went in 2016, and you're referencing Beautiful People.
Beautiful People. Very well deserved, both those two great competitors. I didn't know I couldn't remember if Gail was what class she was in, but she's a Hall of Famer. I mean, she doesn't have a right to talk about it. She's done it all. She certainly has a right. If you don't like her opinion, I get it. But, I'll tell you, Connor, I was watching the Ryder Cup this past weekend. And, I remember when Sergio Garcia goes and plays out at Bethpage, and they ruined it. They ruined him when he was playing out there. When he had that wag, he'd sit there and wag the club by the club. And all these New Yorkers, hit the ball. I mean, they ruined him. I thought it was funny. But that's one thing. These guys were Rory McIlroy were just talking about his girlfriend, his wife, and saying all these vile things to him. I thought it crossed the line so much. When I saw Rory McIlroy flip him off and then make several straight putts, I went straight to my betting site and I bet on Rory McIlroy that day. He destroyed the Americans. But I thought the fans were way overboard. You don't have a right to be an asshole. You have a right to cheer for your team. You have a right to boo the other guys. And I think the same thing on social media. I mean, that's why I blocked 17,138 people. You don't have a right to be an asshole.
Well, I thought it was interesting who decided selectively to be an asshole last week. I guess, there was lots of insinuation that Gail was fishing for a job with AEW. Again, I don't work there. I don't know, but I will say she doesn't need a job. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't understand or appreciate where I'm going with this, but she's married to a celebrity chef, entrepreneur, business owner. Robert Irvine is worth tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to do anything in wrestling anymore. She shared her genuine opinion on something, and people came out of the woodwork to roast her on it. Now, I guess that narrative was out there that she auditioned for a job and then didn't hear back. She corrected the record and said that's actually not true. Her old pal Sanjay Dutt, they worked together and spent a lot of time together in TNA, asked her if she would consider wrestling. I guess they were curious about maybe doing a Gail Kim comeback match. That seems like fun. Sign me up for that. And she said, no, I'm retired. That feels like the end. I don't know. I just don't understand why all of a sudden everybody's on the Gail Kim hate train. It feels silly, John.
Yeah, it feels absolutely silly to me. And, you want these people to comment. I say these people, these great legends like Gail Kim. And I think she is a great legend. And I think she's a great person. I like Gail very much. And you want them to comment, and then they do. You don't like what they say. And so you start extrapolating this into, she's bashing AEW because she had a trial match there and that didn't work out. Maybe she just said what she said because she believed that. There's nothing wrong with that. She doesn't like the death matches. It's not for everybody. And I'm not a big fan of it. I think the guys work hard. I have no issue with it. It's not my idea of what I want to watch. I enjoy the spot. The spot she showed, that was an incredible spot. I mean, that was pretty cool, I thought. But Gail had a different opinion of it. That doesn't make her wrong and me right. It just makes us both have opinions of it. And when you're sharing opinions like this, all of a sudden, people hide behind their phone. I think Twitter needs to have a picture of the person that is tweeting or Xing, whatever you call it now, and a real name by it. And I think that would stop a lot of this, because a lot of these guys just hide behind their little phones and, hide and want to say mean stuff because they're idiots.
Well, somebody that we like a lot around this part of these parts here in wrestling land is the former Dana Brooke. She spent a lot of time in WWE, and that's how she was first probably on your radar. In recent years, we've known her by a different name in TNA, Ash by Elegance. And she just had to forfeit and vacate her TNA Knockouts Championship. She did an interview where she said, unfortunately, as you know, life throws you some curveballs, and that's exactly what I'm going through. I'm no longer able to compete and do what I love to do. So with that being said, I'm stepping away from in-ring competition, and with a heavy heart, I have to forfeit this title. I'm confident in that locker room. Whichever women may hold this title up high, they will elevate it like I've planned to. Obviously, this is a big deal, big news that an active champion is vacating the title because they're no longer able to compete in in-ring competition. We don't know exactly what's going on, but I would say this feels a little bit like the Edge situation. I mean, Edge seemingly as a fan out of nowhere had to give a retirement speech. And we saw years later, Bryan Danielson do something kind of similar. This is obviously a big deal to her, her fans, her supporters, her friends, and the TNA faithful audience. You got to know Dana Brooke in WWE. What do you make of this news, John?
I hate it. She worked very hard to get to where she's at. And I mean, very hard. Dana she is one of these bubbly people that show up in a room and just lights up the room. She's really a fun, good person. I like Dana a lot. I have no idea what happened. It sounds like something physically happened where she has to step back and she got some bad news about an injury or something. Dana has worked extremely hard to get to where she is. I mean, it's a real testament to her that she was TNA champion. And I hate, it's one of these things. God, Conrad, this is the hardest thing in the world. You work your ass off to get to a place. And because you've worked so hard and you've gone through all these matches, all of a sudden now you get to that spot and that's when you get injured. It just sucks. It really sucks for these people that, have finally made it. Edge is the same. Daniel Bryan's the same. they finally make it. They're huge, and all of a sudden, that's when the injuries, have mounted up on them, and they've got to retire. Both those guys were able to come back. Hopefully, Dana will too. I have no idea what it is, but I can't emphasize enough what a nice person Dana is. I mean, she's just fun to be around. She's smart. She has great banter. She's one of the people that you sit there and banter with, and it's just fun because she's so clever with what she does. So I hope that it's something that is temporary.
Well, something that we know is not temporary is Jim Ross playing prognosticator. Boy, he had a tweet, or there was a report that went wild, and I can't wait to get your take on it. But first, I want to talk about our friends at Legal Buddy. Life happens fast. 1 minute you're driving home after work, and the next you see the flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Your heart skips, your hands tighten on the wheel, and you start asking yourself, what do I do now? That's when you need someone on your side. And with the Legal Buddy app, you can connect with a local attorney in seconds, not hours, not days, but right when you need the help. Whether it's a DWI, a car accident, a criminal charge, or even just a traffic ticket, the Legal Buddy app puts real legal support right in your pocket. Imagine having an attorney on call, ready to guide you through some of life's most stressful moments. This isn't a call center. This isn't a waiting game. It's direct access to a lawyer who understands your situation and your community, and one who could step in right away. Think about it. When trouble knocks, do you want to face it alone, or would you rather have the confidence of knowing a professional is already on your side? That's the peace of mind that Legal Buddy gives you, and here's how easy it is. Go download the Legal Buddy app at legalbuddyapp.com. Register today and use the referral code LEGAL for your chance to win a $250 gift card. Life is unpredictable. Accidents happen. Tickets happen. Mistakes happen. But when they do, you don't have to go through it alone. The Legal Buddy app, always on your side. Download the app today and enter the referral code LEGAL. So listen, I can't wait to show you this. Great close personal friend of the show, Andrew Dice Clay, tweeted out something over the weekend that got everybody chatting, and I couldn't help but share it too. I thought it was a really, really cool find. We're talking about from one of the original Ross reports. He was giving everyone updates, he being Jim Ross, pronoun boy, about where developmental was in the year 2001. So it says down on the farm, not in order, and he's breaking down names and talent and giving you his 2 cents. And this is 24 years ago. Here's what he says of Brock Lesnar. Amazing athlete at 6'3", 290 pounds, NCAA national champ, can make it in time. Boy, that's, to say the least. He more than made it. My gosh, right?
Yeah, he more than made it. That was that's a little bit understated right there. You look at Brock and you realize this guy, oh my God, just walk to the ring. I don't care if he can wrestle or not, just walk to the ring. That guy had a look when he walked in. It just, I've said this many times. Kurt Hennig, when he first saw him, he looked at me and goes, oh my God, that's what Hitler had in mind. And I said, yeah, that's the superior race. And it's just like, oh my God, if the aliens ever invade us, I'm sending out Brock Lesnar. Because they'll go back to wherever they're from, like Uranus.
Next up on the list is Shelton Benjamin, and JR back in 2001 wrote, perhaps the best athlete in the program. What was your first impression of Shelton Benjamin, John?
Yeah, how about the best athlete on God's green earth? God almighty, man. I mean, in a business that has had some incredible athletes, some All-Americans, some national champions, some gold medalists, to say that this guy could be the best athlete in the history of the wrestling business, that's saying something. We've had world's strongest man. We've had UFC champions. Sheldon could be the best athlete in the history of wrestling. That's saying something. He was a 100-meter All-American as a JUCO, 100 meters, also an All-American as a heavyweight wrestler. I mean, that's crazy that anybody could do something like that. I mean, Sheldon is an absolute freak. And the fact that he hadn't been a world champion is a crime. But my God, what an athlete.
Next on the list is Steve Bradley. And JR wrote, back in 2001, has the physical skills. Steve Bradley, unfortunately, passed away in 2008. He had his last match in 2005, but it didn't wind up having a happy ending for him. That's not without trying. He had dark matches against Ron Waterman. He wrestled a lot for the Heartland Wrestling Association, which of course was developmental for WWE as well. He wrestled some down in Memphis Championship Wrestling, but a lot of us, he's a blind spot for us. What can you tell us, if anything, about Steve Bradley?
I don't remember much about Steve Bradley. I remember seeing him and thinking he had a lot of talent. I remember Steve Vick, the next one up on the list. Same thing. I don't remember a ton about. I do remember seeing him because you're always looking at guys. Not because it's like competition coming up. It was a couple things. One, you're very interested because you're an older guy. I was at the time. You're interested in these young guys coming up, not because they're going to take your spots. You're just it's just kind of cool to see. And also, is there any opportunity to work with this person? And you saw the same thing in Bradley and in the next one in Vic, but I don't remember a ton about him because I wasn't around him a lot.
Let's talk about Vic. I'll admit I had to look this one up. Scott Vic, it says, excellent work, athletic, must work on charisma. Turns out that's Sick Boy. We saw him in WCW as Sick Boy, but he was trying to carve a name out for himself here in developmental for WWE. Did you see any of Sick Boy in WCW?
No, I didn't see I didn't watch the product hardly at all. We were, like I say, again, no offense to these guys, we were working. And so, especially at that time, it was not like they were any type of competition.
We should talk about the next name that's listed here. Boy, what a class. Randy Orton. JR back in 2001 wrote, third generation natural needs time. Yeah, I think it worked out. What say you?
Holy cow. I was with Bob Orton. We were tag team partners in the early 90s in Japan together. And we were stuck on the JR train, I believe it was, the above ground train. We were drunk like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We couldn't find our way back to the hotel. So we're taking all these trains. We're going all over Tokyo trying to find it. And Bob and I are just laughing and talking. He's like, got that gravelly voice. He goes, I got this kid. He's like 12 years old. He goes, I think he's special. He's like, I think he's going to be good. That was Randy. Yeah, Bob, he is special. That son bitch he is good. Bob was talking about it then when he was like 12 years old, 13, wherever he was at the time, about how much talent he had, how much brain power he had for the business. So when he came in, I knew all about Randy because I was good friends with his dad. His dad helped me so much. So I was really pulling for Randy. Still am.
Next up on the list, Prototype. And the note that JR wrote about Prototype, UPW trained, reminds me of Sting. Now, Prototype was a bodybuilder dude discovered by Rick Bassman in California, just like Sting. And just like Sting, Prototype wore a short, flat haircut. So he had like the blonde flat top, both Prototype and Sting. Of course, we know eventually Prototype would have a quote unquote gimmick change and he became John Cena. How cool is it that JR saw a little bit of Sting in John Cena 24 years ago? Yeah.
And a lot of us did, it was, I don't know if it was the body type or the haircut or what it was. It's tough sometimes when you see guys that look so good. Are they here just because they look good or they're here because they have talent? Because a lot of times guys that look good get a lot of extra chances, and justifiably so. If a guy's big, he has a lot more chances than a guy that's smaller guys. Smaller guys have to be better workers just because of the size difference. And you didn't know with John when you saw him. And, of course, I got to work with him, one of the first ones. I realized right away, this guy's, he is different level. And I don't think anybody could have known he's going to be 17-time world champion and be a movie star and all the stuff that he's done. But I think people knew that he was the guy.
Let's take a look at the last name that's listed here before we get to page 2. The Island Boys, and it's written here, natural Samoan timing and athletic ability, must not get too heavy. Now you may be wondering, who the hell are the Island Boys? Well, how about 3-minute warning? Does Jamal ring a bell? If not, maybe Umaga will. He passed away in 2009 at just 36 years old. And the other half of the Island Boys, we saw him as a bunch of different things, but Rosie is what most of us remember him best as. He passed away at just 47 years old in 2017. Man, this Samoan Dynasty thing, that's not just a gimmick for TV. This has been around since the 70s, maybe before. What say you?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like the Fijians in rugby. You know, they just those guys they're a different level. I mean, I was over in the Hong Kong Sevens, a big rugby event, and I remember at one point they were playing the French team, and the French were big, tough guys. There was either 3 or 4 French players out of 7 that were on the ground hurt from legit clean tackles. I mean, the freaking Fijians were just they're supermen, and that's the way you look at all these Polynesian guys. I mean, they're just good at what they do. They're tough guys. They have a knack for some reason. And most of them, you know, a lot of them are second, third generation. I remember watching the match with Umaga and Cena. I think it was in San Antonio. It may have been the Royal Rumble. I can't remember. But I wasn't calling the match, so I just took the headphones off and sit there at commentary and just table and watch it. It was one of the best matches I've ever seen. I mean, Umaga was freaking different level, man. You wish that guy could live to be 100 because he would have done incredible things in this business. Umaga played high school football barefoot.
What?
In Samoa. He didn't find cleats that he liked. Can you imagine looking back there and seeing this 230-pound Samoan fullback and he doesn't have shoes on? I'm calling timeout. I'm calling timeout and forfeiting the game because that's like, fuck that. We're done playing. We're not playing that guy. Yeah. He played high school football barefoot. Rikishi told me.
My God.
Yeah. Now check that for make sure. But Rikishi told me. By the way, I said something last week that was wrong. I said Dracula was the second best-selling book behind the Bible, and I got crucified on Twitter, which is fine. I said something wrong. It turns out I Googled it, and it said a common myth is that Dracula is the second best-selling book behind the Bible. It's not true. It was something else. I didn't know what it was. So I got to stand corrected on that.
I think the second best-selling book behind the Bible is Have More Money Now.
That's exactly it is. Yes, it is. It's a lot of people say it's better than the Bible. I'm not going to say that because the Bible is the Bible, but it is good. I mean, it's really good. But I'm not going to say it's better than the Bible. A lot of people have said that though.
It's worth a Google if you're looking for a good book to read. Maybe not the good book, but a good book.
That's right. A good book, not the good book.
Not it's a little different.
That's right. Not the.
Yeah, let's take a look at the rest of JR's notes. He covers Dave Bautista. He says main event aura, 6 months to a year away. That's the way JR felt about Dave Bautista in 2001. Was he right? Was he ready to be prime time a year later?
Yeah, the look alone. I mean, Dave's a smart guy, and his history has shown that. A very smart guy. And he had a great look about him. I mean, that sucker was impressive looking. He was huge too. You seen him now? These guys, all these Hollywood stars are losing down to about 120 pounds. I don't know what they're doing, but God bless them. I don't know how I don't know how at their age, because I'm their age, can lose so much weight. Maybe a little bit older. But yeah, Batista you could tell the guy was going to be a massive star.
He debuts on the main roster in May of 2002. So the following year he was on TV. Batista though is interesting because I think everybody would see him and think the same thing that you said. Oh, he's got a main event look. Like he looks like a real life action figure. But then you see other guys who come in and they too look like action figures, but the office isn't sold on them. So that's not the whole story. It can't just be the look. There has to be more to it. What was the intangible that Dave had that Vince saw early on?
I think it was Dave's smartness, his smarts about him. Dave's a very smart guy, and he could talk. He wasn't a great talker, but Dave could put things together. And when you sit backstage, certain guys had such good banter. Dave was very comfortable in his skin. And you sit there and talk to him, you just thought, this guy's got an aura about him. Just like JR said, some guys just have an aura about him, like this guy's a star. And you just felt that way about Dave. And I think Vince saw the same thing that everybody else saw.
Another name listed here is Victoria. Works too hard not to get a chance. No argument for me. She's probably another one of those unsung heroes where she was ahead of her time. Like in an era of bra and panties matches, she was one of the great legitimate in-ring workers she was ready before the audience was ready, it feels like.
Yeah, and you wish Victoria came along 10 years later.
Yeah.
and she had a chance to be in the wrestling era, not just the divas era, because it really limited those women. I've said many times that Tori and Stacy were great athletes. They could have been great wrestlers. They weren't trained to do that. That wasn't their role. And Victoria came along. We're just kind of transitioning to women actually being wrestlers and being equal with the men as far as the wrestling matches and everything else, as they should be. But she wasn't. You wish she'd been 10 years later, because she was really good.
By the way, too, as a reminder, I think she made her debut as one of Godfather's hoes.
She did. That's right. Yeah, she did.
That tells you just how far wrestling has come, where that's your origin story.
That's right.
Speaking of origin stories, it wasn't Mark Henry's origin story in 2001. He'd been with the company since 1996, but he's in developmental. So JR is going to report on him. Lost over 90 pounds, rededicated. Boy, you want to talk about a story of perseverance. Had Mark Henry, when the office first had doubts on him, thrown in the towel and not persevered, we wouldn't have gotten main event Mark Henry. We wouldn't have got that top run he had. Like, fans to this day remember his salmon jacket promo where he turned on John Cena. That was an all-time great wrestling moment, but it might not have happened had he not had the attitude he had to take that constructive criticism from WWE, go drop some LBs, and keep his jersey and stay in the game, right?
Yeah, and I think it's tough for guys like that. A lot of guys had trouble, when they came in, and they came in on top, and they had such success. Mark is, he won the world's strongest man a couple times. There are talks that Mark might be the strongest man in the history of this planet. I mean, the stuff that he's done it's just legendary. But to even be in that conversation of the great strength men of McAllister and all these guys that just did, all these Kazmaier and all these guys that did this incredible stuff, that's incredible. So you have this huge success coming in, you go right on top. That's a tough thing to do. And Mark had, by his own admission, it didn't work right away. But he went down and retooled himself, went up to Canada, trained with the Hearts, really worked his ass off to come back. I mean, what Mark did was a testament to Mark Henry. You see why he was not only, the world's strongest man. Obviously, he had a lot of gifts from God that made him that. But you also see that there's a lot of work that came with that. And that's what came with wrestling. Mark really worked his ass off to get back to where he was. And then you find out that this guy's a smart guy that can talk. I mean, we had a home run with Mark. I think Vince saw that early. It just didn't pan out for a while. But when it did pan out, it panned out because Mark Henry made it happen. A real testament to Mark.
Shout out to Mark Henry and the good folks over at Busted Open. Hey, Lance Cade is next on the list. I think everybody was pulling for him and saw the same thing. JR wrote, Barry Windham-like, maybe a year. Sadly, though, Lance Cade passed away at the end of the year. I think it is. No, it turns out, okay, he was with us a little longer. Man, my gosh, it was Russ Haas. I'm getting ahead of myself. Lance Cade passed away at just 29 years old. And I think a lot of people saw him and thought, hey, that guy's going to make it. I mean, I think he gets started with Shawn Michaels and people thought he was going to be a real prodigy. He's like 6'5". He's like 270 pounds. He looks like a wrestler you would draw up, and his story didn't have a happy ending, John.
No, it didn't. And that's a shame because Lance was a really good guy. Lance was a pleasure to be around. Everybody liked Lance. And he was very talented. I mean, really talented at everything he did. Lance would have been a huge star. That comparison to Wyndham is pretty apt. But it just, man, something like that's heartbreaking because Lance would have been around a long time and he would have been a star for the next 15, 20 years if he'd have lived. Unfortunately, life had a different turn.
The Haas brothers are on here next. You can tell JR loves these guys. He wrote Oklahoma born, Seton Hall educated. They remind me of the great Briscoe brothers tag team. Most everyone listening to this is very familiar with Charlie Haas. He went on with Shelton Benjamin to be the world's greatest tag team, and what a faction they were with Kurt Angle. But Russ Hoss passed away later this same year, December 15th, 2001. He's only 27 years old when he passes away. Only in the business for like 3 years. But John, in an alternate timeline, what would the Hoss brothers' legacy be? Will we be talking about them like we talked about the Steiners or something like that?
Let me ask you a question about this. Who gives a shit if they're Oklahoma born?
I appreciate that.
Why is this in a freaking scouting report? They're Oklahoma born. So what does that mean? They know how to build meth labs, play bingo. They've learned how to maybe read. What they're Oklahoma born. Is that supposed to be good? What? This is such a bullshit scout report. Like, what? This is what JR turned in? Come on, give me a freaking break.
Oklahoma born's got
Oklahoma born. Oh boy, let's set off the fireworks. They're born in Oklahoma. Holy cow. Should make Oklahoma a parking lot for Kansas.
That said, do we want to have anything nice?
No, wait a minute. These guys were talented. Now, these guys were awesome. Forget the fact they were born in Oklahoma. That's like a detriment to them. I mean, just like that's like you got to live. Anybody who has a car left Oklahoma. That's why there's no cars in Oklahoma, because if you got a car, you freaking leave. And as I've said all along, we need a wall in this country, but between Texas and Oklahoma, right along the Red River. I mean, forget Mexico. They used to be part of Texas. But the Haas brothers were fantastic. And you're right. They'd have been like the Steiners. I think they were good. They were really good. Charlie was great, by himself, but his brother Russ was just as good. They would have been really fantastic. They were young, good-looking young guys, could really wrestle, could amateur wrestle. They could do anything. And they were an incredible pleasure to be a. Me and Ron loved those two guys. Told the story, many times about going down to OVW or wherever the heck it was, and some promoter wanted us to do something stupid, and, we refused because we liked them so much. And both those guys were just good guys. It's just a shame that Charlie lost his brother Russ. Russ was such a fine young man, just like Charlie is and was a fine young guy as well. Charlie got a great job now, by the way. Mr. Briscoe helped hook him up as a high school wrestling coach. He's doing absolutely wonderful. Charlie's a wonderful human being, even though he's Oklahoma born.
Yeah, we won't hold that against him. The rest of the notes.
How does that make a scouting report? Oklahoma born? Like is that some pedigree something that is supposed to be impressive?
I may have to, just based on your response here, I'm going to need to create an Oklahoma born shirt for Jim Ross, and we'll send you one in an extra medium.
I had to wear "I'm Oklahoma's bitch" one time, a shirt when Texas lost Oklahoma. That was the bet I made with Drew Briscoe. I had to wear it all day at TV. It was the worst day of my life. I rode to the freaking game one time with JR, and I bet he smoked 43 cigarettes on the way there because he was so freaking nervous. And I'm going, JR, you're going to kill us. You're going to kill us. You guys have got so much better team. And they beat us by like 30 or 40 points that day. Well, you never know. He's so nervous. Then he invited me to have a drink with him afterwards, which was very nice. And JR picked up the car, had a nice limousine that we rode in. JR was very nice about it. I'm sitting there, in walks Bob Stoops. And I said, are we at the team hotel? He goes, yeah, we're at the Oklahoma team hotel. I go, God almighty, I'd rather be in hell. I mean, I'd rather have dinner with bin Laden than have dinner with somebody from Oklahoma.
Wow. I thought I took college football seriously. Now I'm learning a lot here today. Well, that'll do it for us touching on some of JR's notes. He did throw in this last plug that I think is worth mentioning. Plus, OVW has several more skilled talents, or several more young talents who are very similar in skill levels. When we are waiting to see who will break through from this list of talented athletes. Two huge athletes to keep in the back of your mind are former UPW talents Nathan Jones and John Heidenreich. Jones, 6'10", 300 pounds, competed in ESPN's World's Strongest Man contest, and Heidenreich, 6'7", 285, played the NFL with New Orleans. Their journey is just getting underway. John, I don't know when we'll talk about them again. You got any good Nathan Jones or John Heidenreich stories you can share with us?
Nathan, I worked with Nathan several times, and for some reason, I finally told him, I said, Nathan, listen, let me call the match. Okay. I'm going to make you look better than you can look by yourself. I promise you. I'll call it for you. I mean, I've done this for a long time. And he just relaxed. I called the match, I'm putting him over, like I should. Nathan looked like a freaking $1 million. I was there when he walked out in Perth, Australia. I mean, I saw him right before that. You could tell something was wrong with this guy. And we're on, I think, a charter flight, and he was just kind of rocking back and forth. You could tell something was messing with him. We had a flight where I think that's where we almost had the plane crash in Russia. Then we went to Singapore. Then we went to somewhere else. We went to Seoul, Korea first, Singapore, then Perth, Australia, back to back to back. It was a terrible trip. And Nathan just snapped, walked out. He was in his hometown. He was going over, got his bag, and just literally walked out. We never saw him again. Nathan, I like Nathan. He was a good dude, and he would have drawn a ton of money. That guy had a look. But, Connor, when he hit you, I've never been hit that hard in my life. It was, brother, he would hit you across the back. He was safe, but it would just send shockwaves down me and hit me so hard. I go, oh, my God, I think he's broke something. But what a good dude. So was Heidenreich. I liked Heidenreich as well. You know, I had a lot of interactions with Heidenreich as well. Little bit out there, as you can imagine. Yes, but both of them, I guess, a little bit out there. But both of them very talented. Especially Nathan, though. Nathan could have been world champion.
It's fascinating to me, Nathan Jones, because he's with the company for a hiccup.
Yeah.
But he had a look that people still talk about all these years later.
Man, he was incredible. When I'd see him walk out there, because I worked with him a lot in the matches, especially on the house shows. And when he'd walk out there, man, people were just in awe. He was a massive guy. I mean, huge arms. He was impressive. Rumor was that he was, in solitary confinement down in Tasmania, which I think he lended credence to. He talked about it. And he was down there a lot. He said me one time they had a riot group that had come in there and beat him up. And they were all standing outside going, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. Nobody wanted to go in there and face him.
Well, we're looking forward to facing you next week. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live. It's totally free too on YouTube. It's somethingtowrestle.com. That's how you can find us. Just fat finger that into your browser and our YouTube will pop up. Love to have your interaction on social media as well. We want to hear from you. How exactly did John block you? Why exactly did John block you? We want to see it. We want to hear from you. Tweet us at Prichard Show. I cannot wait to see some of these next week. You can also find us on Facebook at Something to Wrestle. We're on Instagram at Something to Wrestle. And of course, you can interact with John Layfield and see if you're blocked right now at JC Layfield over on Twitter. He blocks fewer people on Instagram, but he's trying to get those rookie numbers up. And if you'd like to be among the next ones blocked on IG, that's at John Bradshaw Layfield. And if you just can't get enough, John, can I recommend Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw? That's right. John does not one, but two podcasts every week. One with his longtime, great, close personal friend, Mr. Gerald Briscoe. And all these full episodes, hundreds of them, in fact, are available now anywhere you enjoy podcasts. Yes, they're on YouTube. Yes, they're on Apple. Yes, they're on Spotify. And yes, they'll talk about UFOs and Bigfoot and have real experts on hand. Guys like Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse or the Blue Meanie, who we all know is a UFO expert. This has been a lot of fun today, John. Any last plugs we can throw out there for you? What are you doing this weekend? Anything fun?
No, I'm going to some party in LA for WWE. I had no idea what it is or anything. Me and Ron are going. They're flying us out there. We're going literally to a party. That's what we're doing. I have no idea what it is. I assume it's a big deal. I have no idea what it is. I'm going to some party with Ron and flying out Saturday morning. And so hopefully the plane has good Wi-Fi so I can watch football, and flying back on Sunday, and hopefully the plane has good Wi-Fi so I can watch football on the way back. So yeah. And by the way, we got Bram Stoker's grandson, Dracula, his grandson. That's why I had in my mind about Dracula's book on our podcast right now on our YouTube channel. This was very interesting. Bram Stoker, not Stroker. I think it's Stoker, was a really interesting guy. He was wrote this book about Dracula, really captured a lot of things from the science fields, the medical fields, all kinds of pretty cool things.
Well, the way you kept saying Stroker, I thought we had a new sponsor here.
We got Stroker in your anus.
Okay. On that note, boys and girls,
all born in Oklahoma.
a parking lot.
That's right. A parking lot in Kansas.
I mean, I've never heard that described that way. I will be borrowing that, but stay tuned. Coming soon to JR's merch stand, Oklahoma born. We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.